collaboration with the Cyprus Mail. This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
Coming up on this week's programme, we join an event in the Nicosia buffer zone which put a new slant on peace building.
The need, the emergency to introduce innovation, novelty in the way we approach peace building in Cyprus.
And staying with that event, a lot of things are missed when it comes to peace building and the role of women and gender.
In talking about peace, in everything they do, they forget about the human aspect. They forget about the people that are the internally displaced or refugees. They forget about families being broken up because of war, and the women are ultimately left to get their children and possibly their parents to safety, to find a roof. Third, I mean, people forget about things that when you are displaced, you need to go to the toilet. Basic stuff.
And it's World Oral Health Day on Sunday.
The Ministry of Health is giving great emphasis on oral health. Therefore, today, our 4 mobile dental units are offering free oral health examination to all Cypriots in order to give them the opportunity to be informed about their oral health.
On Wednesday this week, there was an event entitled Women, Peace and Climate Change in a Divided Cyprus. It brought together people from all over the world, but one of our local panellists was Dr. Xenia Loizidou. She spoke about creating an island-wide network as a peace-building tool. So, Xenia, will you just tell us what you were telling all these people? Because they did, as I say, come from all over the world pretty well, but it was a very wide brief. So what was the remit of your speech?
Yes, thank you for inviting me, Rosie, to your broadcast. It's one of the first times that there is an event connecting gender, peace building and climate change in Cyprus. So it was a very interesting, very important event, I would say. And what I was talking about is the need, the emergency to introduce innovation, novelty in the way we approach peace building in Cyprus. And by this, I suggest to have actions that help us indeed to have our hands across the divide and cooperate among the communities of Cyprus. And I had the examples of 2 networks that the organization I'm chairing, ACTI, has already developed. So they are ready, we know they work, and we could have these examples to proceed with this, what I call innovation, introduce innovation in the peace-building process. The 2 networks, one is called the Green Cluster. Green Cluster is a cluster, of course, of small businesses covering all the part of Cyprus controlled by the Republic. It's an amazing success, having more than 60% of the small businesses run by women. And the idea was, and we succeeded, to create synergies among them, promote cooperation among them. And it was amazing, and it is amazing. This network has now more than 350 members. Most of them are located in rural areas, so they are farmers, but also a lot are located in urban areas, like marketeers or any kind of small businesses, and they started working together. In only the first 6 months of running this cluster, we wrote down more than 150 synergies among them. And we have the statements of several owners of these small businesses that really say how important was all this process of entering the network, participating in the networking events, being eligible to receive scholarships, small scholarships to go abroad. So We are working on the extroversion of small businesses and the power of cooperation.
Well, can I just say there, Ksenia, the power of cooperation. We know that for many years, women's groups here in Cyprus have been reaching out across our divided island to try and work together for peace. But when you bring something as important as climate change into the mix, I'm presuming that you will therefore attract an awful lot of other people who are very concerned by what's happening globally to climate and thinking that perhaps they can make a difference there, and that will simply bring them together with other women across the divide that they might not otherwise meet.
Yes, you're absolutely right, and this I should say from the beginning. Green Clusters is based on sustainability principle, which is environment, society, and economy. So we promote sustainability within the members of the cluster, and the members who are in rural areas are farmers. We have specific actions, trainings, but on-the-job trainings to promote good agricultural practices, to introduce the parameter of climate crisis in their everyday life. They don't see it, In Cyprus, we have 60% desertification, 60% of our lands, and yet this is not built in our actions. We are still using fertilizers that destroy this humus, the elements that give the earth the fertility that is losing due to desertification. So yes, through this cluster, we promote all the actions that could be considered as combating climate change impacts. And this is what join us. This is what we are trying to find, actions that really are win-win. We live in an island, so the island is a common natural system. The biodiversity of the island is common. So it is stupid to believe that we can just draw a boundary and that's it. The island is not functioning like this. So this is what we want to show by promoting synergies and partnerships. And it is SDG, Sustainability Development Goal 17 partnerships. By the other hand, I strongly believe that promoting also economic empowerment makes our effort to introduce sustainability more balanced, because we have, as I said, environment, society, and economy. So we are doing a lot of events as civil societies, but sometimes it's good to introduce the parameter of economic empowerment of women, of small farmers, and this will make things more tangible and give an added value to our peace-building effort.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it, that it's always bothered me that in an island the size of Cyprus, there is a fair amount, I would say, of ignorance about the fact that we share the same air and the same water and all of those things. And if one side is being badly affected by anything that concerns those things, then it is inevitably going to also impact the other side. So we need to work together on the climate issue, don't we?
Yes, and isn't it surprising that it is not a common knowledge and a common perception? For me, I'm working for 30 years in this area. I'm working with Turkish Cypriot partners for more than 25 years. And we are always surprised of how this reality is not perceived as it is. So this is why in the last 25 years we developed common activities. For example, recently we had another network of fishermen to combat marine litter pollution, marine litter problem, plastic marine litter, and ghost nets. There are so many environmental threats that can make us work together, because we should work together. It's impossible, as you said, so we are in an island. Biodiversity of the island is one. It's stupid to believe that we can have work together. So perhaps this was one of the reasons that people from the sector of the environment, we were among the first who started by communal activities in early 90s, and also people from gender, from women. So you see, these are two progressive areas that realize the realities much earlier than the rest. However, just to come back to this conference, I think connecting the three, climate change, gender and peace building, it's a great initiative, and we fully support it. And we hope that after this we will have the support to implement actions that promote sustainability, which is our only way to combat climate change impacts.
And it is women who are looking after families who are mostly impacted by the problems created by climate change. Food prices go up, jobs are hard to come by. I mean, there's an awful lot of little strings that need to be brought into the same argument, aren't there?
Yes, that's why it's been 30 years we are contacting any authority, competent authority, to promote photovoltaic systems, solar systems in each household, not the big one, but each of us could be a producer of energy, and this would be a great relief for the household, and we could do it. We didn't in both sides of the island. Women suffer most of all this climate change impact. That's why women reacted earlier than most. And I was saying that the members of the Green Cluster are by 60%, the small businesses owned by women, because women realize that they should do something to combat climate change impact in order to improve their lives and the lives of their family. And this is what we see, and this is why we are optimistic about this. If women have a way to develop a business which is sustainable and also give them income, I think this would be the most successful action we could promote it for peace building in this island.
Well, it's certainly something that needs to be continually discussed, I think, and perhaps brought forward, and you certainly did that on Wednesday this week with that Women, Peace and Climate Change in a Divided Cyprus event. Dr. Xenia Loizidou, thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
One of the organisers of that event was my next guest. She is Magda Zenon from Hands Across the Divide. Magda, there was a lot of emotion, I understand, at the event. Do tell us the reaction, particularly of the foreign ladies who joined you presumably online.
We make a really big effort as Hands Across the Divide to treat Cyprus as one island. It's not a divided island. So there was Greek Cypriot and Turkish Cypriot representation on the panels. We also had women from Kashmir, the Ukraine and Georgia, and especially when the woman from the Ukraine spoke, everyone went silent. And while she was speaking, it was the time when they bombed Mariupol. I think it was, I don't know if it was a hospital or whatever. And most people almost started crying. It was horrifying or heart-wrenching to watch her just freeze and want to cry. So I think the main message that came out of this is that wherever we are, whatever we are doing, conflict unites us, and we need to stand together to fight the conflict. Conflict is never acceptable. And the one way we can actually come together, besides in sisterhood as women, is also through climate change. Because wherever we are being affected by climate change to different extents and in different areas, but climate change is something that is affecting us all, and add to that, countries in conflict. The main feedback that came back, the main discussion that happened at the end, and as usual, we underestimated that panelists will go over time, regardless of whether you give them a time limit or not. The main message that came out is that if we have to face and deal with climate change, we have to have inclusive decision-making. We have to have women and every other voice in the community at the table if we are going to manage climate change, if we're going to face it, because this is not 5 to 12, as they say in Greek. This is almost at the point when we can't fight it. So we really need to come together with all the voices. Women are an important factor, because if you add to that they're 50% of the population, they are the ones that have the closest relationship to, firstly, to being consumers. They're usually the shoppers. In the rural countries, they're the ones that deal with land, or they feed their families from the land, or they are the ones that are displaced because in conflict, men go to the front line and women are displaced. They move their families away to keep them safe. So we need to have them at the table. There's a lot of work that can be done, but the most important thing is we need to push to get the voices of the women at the decision-making table, especially in terms of policies related to climate change, but not only at the table, at every level of processes related to climate change.
How did you feel that the people present at that event felt about including climate change in peace-building efforts? A lot of people don't make that connection.
Well, I think a lot of us more active citizens, you do make that connection because as one of the speakers always said, and I think you spoke to earlier, Ksenia has always said that, you know what, climate change, the people that have been dealing in climate have actually been doing peace building anyway. Because they've come together and they've had to work together because rivers, storms, fires don't recognize borders. So you actually automatically deal with people regardless of whether they are technically your enemy or the other. You're working with them. You have to work with them. The turtles don't know whether they're Greek Cypriot or Turkish Cypriot. When we had the fires in the south, a group of young women from throughout the island, so a small group, but a group of young women from throughout the island got together and collected money to help the people that have been displaced or affected by the fire. So we do make the connection. We just need to make a broader connection, okay? And we need to get a broader base of people involved in this conversation because I agree with you. It's not always automatic. We also had a lovely young woman from an island-wide initiative called Avli that are dealing with climate change. And they are young people, young adults from throughout the island that are just working together. And the young woman made a very strong point about the fact, you know what, climate change usually affects the vulnerable, and the vulnerable are women. So we need to get women at the table because they are the ones that will be affected, so they need to find a way to protect themselves and include what protection they need in the decisions that are made. So people do make the decision, do make the connection. We need to get more people to make that connection.
Right, now then, when you say women at the table, I presume you're not just talking about the negotiations here in Cyprus, for example, and building the initiative for a united island and peace. Presumably you're also talking about having more women, perhaps in the policy areas of government and the civil service, to address these climate change issues.
Absolutely, and I need to make clear that when you're talking about women, you're not only talking about biologically women, okay? You also need the gender perspective, okay? Because just being a woman doesn't give you a gender perspective. You need that other viewpoint. You need to step slightly to the side. So you need to have the gender perspective, but you surely also need women because I'm tired of seeing policymakers in grey suits, men, and over 60 years old. So you need to change the picture we see and add women to the table, but you also need to have the gender perspective, and you also need to extend the gender perspective to not only include women. You need to make it broader. Because all marginalized groups need to be at the table to ensure that the policies that are being put together are inclusive and don't leave many people behind.
Did the event and the participants come to some agreement as to where you go from here? Will there be another such event? What's next?
Well, I think the common thought was that we need to follow this up. We need to make a network of women that are involved in this. And the specific proposal I made to Ksenia is that we actually need to have some kind of conference that brings together the women peace builders discussing climate change and not discussing peace in the way we usually think about it in terms of negotiations. Because I agree with you, negotiations is one point, but it's not the only point. Because peace is not just sitting at the table and sorting out the Cyprus problem. Peace is in everything we do every day. So every policy, every movement we do every day is one part of the journey of peace building. So we are going to try and come together with Ksenia as Hands Across the Divide and also including International Alliance of Women because they're also interested in joining us on the journey and also maybe taking us on other journeys in this quest for peace, making the link of peace building and climate change, to come together and do either a few workshops or a conference on women peace builders and climate change.
What was the input? You mentioned Kashmir and Georgia. It's interesting when you look at the perspective from many different parts of the globe. Do they all come to it from roughly the same starting point?
They come from roughly the same starting point, that it's a gender perspective. One of the interesting things was the woman from Georgia was talking about how the women from Azerbaijan, Armenia and Georgia come together and try to bridge the borders. The woman from Dr. Kirk, who's Indian, but she actually made a statement on behalf of the displaced Hindu Kashmiris that have been denied their domicile as well. So a lot of perspectives come in. The perspective, though, is a gender perspective, that people, in talking about peace, in everything they do, they forget about the human aspect. They forget about the people that are internally displaced or refugees. They forget about families being broken up because of war, and the women are ultimately left to get their children and possibly their parents to safety, to find a roof, food. I mean, people forget about things that when you are displaced, you need to go to the toilet. Basic stuff. This is never a consideration when there is conflict. Whether it's a conflict like the one we're seeing in the Ukraine now, or an economic crisis, or a natural disaster, these basic things of how conflicts affect human beings, the community, which is usually woman-led because the men are dealing with the conflict per se, because it's a patriarchy. People forget that human factor, and this is what we need to bring back into the discourse.
Magda, always a pleasure talking to you, and it sounds like it was a fascinating event. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Rosie, and look forward to welcoming more women to this conversation.
That's Magda Zenon from Hands Across the Divide, one of the organisers of that conference in the middle of this last week.
This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
In collaboration with the Cyprus Mail, this is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
The biggest achievement of Crime Stoppers has been the ability of the public to be able to give information about crime anonymously.
There's no way I could have kept prostituting without the drugs. There's no way I could have had my body used like a public toilet, because that's actually what prostitution is.
And then the fourth series I started 3 days after I'd won the Oscar, so the whole of the Moloch of the Glen experience was all interplatted with the Gosford Park Oscar experience.
I was working with Ronnie James Dio, and David was going to reform Whitesnake in 2003.
Cyprus was chosen because Cyprus is a stable, peaceful and secure place.
We have to really look closely. What are we doing with children? What are we doing with adolescents? And what are we doing with adults that can help them move into a more literate situation?
The ones that I'm proudest of are the ones that were true discoveries, where we found something we didn't know existed.
March the 20th is World Oral Health Day, and we're celebrating it here in Cyprus today with free dental checkups across the island. From the Ministry of Health to tell us more about it, we welcome dentist Christala Haralambous. Christala, thank you very much indeed. Can you tell me first of all why we should be looking after our oral health? A lot of people just don't bother, do they?
Oral health is very important. It's strongly related with oral general health and with our quality of life. Therefore, the 20th of March has been decided to celebrate every year as the World Oral Health Day. The Ministry of Health is giving great emphasis on oral health. Therefore, today, our 4 mobile dental units are offering free oral health examination to all Cypriots in order to give them the opportunity to be informed about their oral health and any treatment needs they may need.
So what will the dental units actually be looking at? Obviously, they'll look inside your mouth, but dentists can spot a lot of problems that we don't often associate with just teeth, can't they?
Exactly. We are not looking just teeth. We are examining the mouth. And mouth, that means the gums, the tongue, and the mucosa. So our dentists will provide to all the citizens information about oral hygiene, about any questions they may have about their oral health, and any oral diseases they may have in their mouth.
Am I right in thinking that, if in actual fact, a good inspection of the mouth can often show up problems that are occurring elsewhere in the body?
Exactly. We say that the mouth is the mirror of our body. So a lot of diseases have oral signs. You can identify general diseases through the mouth. So yes, a good oral health has positive impact on general health and is related with general health.
Now, the dental units that are being deployed by the Ministry of Health here, I think, are going to be outside Nicosia, Limassol, Paphos and Famagusta General Hospitals. But I think you've also managed to persuade some private dentistry people to also offer a free checkup.
Yes, and we have a strong collaboration with the Cyprus Dental Association, and their members have agreed to offer free dental examination today, but with an appointment, of course.
Of course. Now, can you tell us a little bit about how we should be looking after our oral health?
Well, three main and simple steps that all people should follow in order to promote our oral health. And this has to do with brushing our teeth at least twice a day, in the morning and in the evening, using soft toothbrush and a fluoride toothpaste. In addition, of course, we must try to reduce sugar consumption and visiting regularly, at least once a year, the dentist. These small steps will help all of the people to improve and promote their oral health.
Am I right in thinking that when you brush your teeth, you should also brush your tongue?
Exactly, because bacteria may stay on the tongue. Therefore, after brushing our teeth, we should also brush our tongue. And except for brushing, in order to clean the dental surfaces, we should also use interdental brushes or dental floss.
To make sure you get between the teeth?
Between the teeth, exactly.
Now, what about as people get older, they often get gum disease or receding gums. Can that be addressed as well?
Of course. Most of the people are familiar with dental caries, but there is another oral disease that it's called gingivitis and can progress to periodontitis. Is when we are losing bone, and that can be prevented through correct brushing, regular dental checkups, as well as frequent cleanings of the teeth. And it's very important to mention that people with diabetes are in higher risk for having periodontitis. And that is related with what I had already said about the connection and the relation between oral and general health. And sometimes dentists may identify a patient with diabetes because of the periodontitis that he would recognize in the mouth.
So it's not just, as we said at the beginning, about good breath and nice teeth. It's about general health.
General health and quality of life, exactly.
And that's the message that's coming through from World Oral Health Day, which, as we said, falls on Sunday. But here in Cyprus, we're marking it today. So check out with your local dentist whether they're on board for those free checkups, or go along to your local hospital. Our thanks to Dr. Kristalla Charalambous for telling us all about it. Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.